Did you know that there is something very wrong with the building behind me? Don't worry, I don't blame you. It's not something that you would notice if you weren't looking for it. But even so, this building does have a huge flaw that makes it practically useless. Welcome to the rump of Castle Morn, the perfect area for those who enjoy rain, piles of corpses, and jellyfish that somehow spits in the face of evolution. It's a small, fairly barren area where you aren't exactly incentivized to spend much time, given that it only really exists as a place where you respawn should you die to the misbegotten Leonine. But if you instead choose to explore your surroundings and pay extra attention to this building, you may come to notice something special. There is no way to enter it, and that's not because someone has blocked off the door or that the entrance crumbled into itself. No, From Software simply didn't add a door to this building.
That is so weird. Why is there no door lost?
Excellent question, Thumbie. The most logical answer is that the level designer simply forgot, or that they didn't bother, thinking nobody would ever make a YouTube video on the topic.
Don't you think it's a little unfair of you to judge this building based on real life?
It is unfair.
Why?
But I'm going to do so anyways, because 1. I think it's rather funny, and 2. I weirdly appreciate these places more because of it. It helps the artistry shine through, like a continuity error in one of your favorite movies. It's overall an inconsequential detail, but I cannot stop thinking that in-universe, you now have this group of hardworking who are competent enough to create a structurally sound stone fortress with a tower at the edge of the sea, but somehow they forgot to add one of the basic necessities of any building: a door. Elden Ring is rich with such places, like this staircase in Stormvale Castle that leads to absolutely nothing, or Merca's village only being 5 houses despite a seemingly unending supply of meat people in the dungeons. And I'm sure you have your own examples, so comment down below and give Daddy some engagement. One of my favorite no-sense things that we see repeatedly in Elden Ring are elevators. Some elevators are reasonable, functioning through a classic rope and pulley system. But others are pillars of seemingly infinite length being pushed up by some unknown force. Who decided that we needed an ornate stone slab 500 feet long to be pushed through the entirety of the elevator shaft? In order for one of these things to be built, not only do you need to carve out a humongous piece of rock and transport it to whatever location, but you also need to dig a hole deep enough for this thing to fit in.
Also, Lost didn't notice this. But why are there these unnecessary long elevator shafts that lead nowhere for elevators that don't need them? It seems like a lot of hard work for something that's essentially just an OSHA violation.
And to add insult to injury, we already have the magical know-how to make platforms float upwards along a set path, like this one from the underground. You know, I haven't noticed this before, but if this thing is magic, and it seems to be, why do I have to pull a lever to bring it back down? Heading back to Castle Morn for a moment. Have you ever noticed how this huge gate makes no sense? It's not part of a bigger wall that somehow crumbled into the sea. You can tell because the gate itself is in perfect condition. These protruding things don't have a scratch of damage. And why does it exist in the first place? From a gameplay perspective, it's clear that it's there to indicate that there's a boss on the other side. But in-universe, why is it so huge? I understand that you don't want people climbing over it, but that point is not very relevant when anyone with the swimming perk can easily go around. In fact, the whole back segment of Morn is entirely unpractical. In order to get anywhere, you need to parkour down to this area, which contains a few jail cells and storage containers. But you know what it doesn't have? any reasonable way of accessing it. Most of this area is actually disconnected from the castle proper, and the part that is connected doesn't have a door linking the inside to the outside. It wouldn't require much effort for an environmental artist or a level designer to add a blocked door. I could do it right now. See?
I think perhaps the developers didn't want to give you any false hopes or wrong leads when showing you where to go. Ease of navigation is super important in a game like this, and you really want to avoid confusing the player.
That's a valid point.
Thank you, Lost. It feels really good when you acknowledge me on an intellectual level. Oh no.
Nervously, you walk down into the steep blackness of some long-forgotten pit. You can hear the movements of unseen horrors shuffling around you. Then, the darkness is broken by a tiny ray of light. It's a candle. Not just one candle, but a whole collection of candles. Actually, whoever's in charge of this cave must have bought candles wholesale, because they are everywhere. And who lit them? Is it the shambling undead beastmen who walk aimlessly around the area? Do they have some kind of rotation where everyone gets a week of candle duty? They already have these long-lasting arcane fireballs throughout the cave, so why the candles? And why add lit candles right next to the fires? From a resource management point of view, it seems rather wasteful. This, though, isn't solely a FromSoft thing either. You can see this a lot in horror games, as candles are a great way to add atmosphere, even if it's at the expense of logic. Another jump in logic is the size of this gate at Castle Marai. It's large enough to fit a procession through, but in order to get there, you have to climb up this ladder. Once you're through, the path leads to another ladder. Imagine the bottlenecks of people entering and leaving. This pathway is pretty nice looking, but why does it exist? To get here, we gotta jump onto the roof and climb a ladder. Not exactly easy access, but once we get here, does the path actually lead to somewhere? No! There are no doors, no interiors, just more roof and parkour. So why create this pathway? And why fill it with more academy stuff? Whatever architect designed this must have done so after several years of continuously sniffing glue. The good stuff. If you remember back 7 or maybe 8 minutes ago, I mentioned that I view these things in the same way as continuity errors in movies. And that's what we call foreshadowing, because recently I watched Thomas Flight's video on bad continuity in films and how an editor can choose to leave in a continuity error because what really matters the most in a scene is the preservation of emotion, not physical continuity. And I feel the same about things shown here. Who really cares about the logistics of lighting every single candle in the dragon pit? It looks awesome. Also, I personally appreciate these small reminders that we are exploring a constructed reality. It makes it feel more special to me. Please subscribe, because I want to be rich and famous. If you want to help with these videos even more, then I have a Patreon where my newest video is already live. Thank you everyone. Kisses.